Shadow and I have traveled high and low over mountains and rivers and oceans and seas to get far away from city lights. And we found a nice dark site out here in the middle of the desert. But where are we? Let's climb to the top of that sand dune and look for some clues. Somehow I have a feeling I'm going to regret this. Oh, I'm already regretting this. Whew. I'm already sliding backwards. Oh, why can't I have 4 little legs and paws? It's so easy for you. I can't do this. I'm gonna go around and up the side. It's too steep here. And then we'll look for the clues. Look at that delineating line right on the peak here. I mean, that is a perfect fine line. And look at the wind blowing the sand over the edge. Wow. Actually, I can feel the wind blowing the sand against my legs. What are you doing, Shadow? I think he's trying to find a cool place. I don't blame him. So this is really interesting. This side where the wind is blowing right to left, this side where Shadow's standing on is harder. And if I go over to this side, oh, whew. It's slow going. Oh, a cloud just blocked the sun. Almost there. Almost there. Shadow, come here, boy. Come on. Come on. Come on, boy. Oh my goodness. Look at you go. Why can't I have 4 legs and 4 paws like you? Look at you go. Look at you go, Shadow. Look at you go. Oh my goodness, good boy. Good boy. Oh, I bet you're exhausted. Whew. So, we're in southern Utah, and we're at the Coral Dunes State Park. I've been here before. We've imaged from here before. High elevation, dark skies. Now we hope these clouds blow away, and they're forecast to. So this whole area was an ancient seabed. Layers of sandstone. They call it Navajo sandstone. And this valley here creates a wind tunnel. And the wind blows and it whittles away at the sandstone cliffs. And the little sand particles over many, many years have filled in this gorge. And this runs for miles. I believe it's 8 miles. I'll double check and I'll put it in the title below, but miles of this sand and the wind blowing, creating sand dunes. So I'm not in Saudi Arabia after all, but it sure feels like I am. Well, there's actually a reason I wanted to get to the top, because I wanted to use this as an illustration. You see how the winds have carved, blown the sand into these sand dunes. Well, that's exactly what happens in space. In space, we have giant nebulae, big clouds of hydrogen, predominantly hydrogen, but oxygen and sulfur and helium and other elements. And these giant clouds are where stars are formed. And when that matter coalesces and begins to develop a gravitational pull and more of it is pulled in, It starts to heat up from the gravitational pull, compressing it all together. Eventually it gets so hot it ignites, and you have a new star. And those new hot stars, they produce tremendously powerful stellar winds. And the stellar winds will push up against the nebulosity, and it'll push it out, and it will create literally nebula dunes. We'll call them nebula dunes. It literally is the same process. And thus in space we have these beautiful creations with this kind of stuff going on. Mounds and knots of matter and areas that are hollowed out from the stellar winds. And it's not just new hot stars, also dying stars that reach the end of their life stage and will kind of, as they burn through the hydrogen and their fuel, and they collapse in on themselves, and then that causes a whole bunch of heat and pressure and get another explosion. And those explosions again will smash up against the nebulosity and create spaces. And it's just the same thing. It's the exact same thing that's going on here on Earth, essentially. Now, I'm going to be going after a couple of objects tonight, both of which were formed in the similar way that I just described. And we'll talk about that as we're imaging. Wow, the winds just suddenly died down. It's as still as can be. All of a sudden, still as can be. Now, way over there, on that big sand dune, people are sledding down it. And at the ranger station, you can actually rent these boards, and you can sled down. I think we're going to essentially do the same thing on our feet. But before we do, we work so hard to get up here. Let's just soak it in. Maybe even walk a little further along this ridge. I just find this fascinating. This line that delineates between the one side and the other. And the wind is completely stopped all of a sudden. I mean, we've been up here for 10 minutes. And it was blowing like crazy, right? And now it's just as calm as can be. But the wind was coming up, and then the sand was blowing over. And this side is really loose, and this side is somewhat firm. That's just fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Can you believe we're in southern Utah? Shadow, are you ready to go down? You look hot and dirty. All right. We worked so hard to get up here. We're going to go straight down. Let's see what happens. You ready, Shadow? Oh! Hey, little buddy. Come on up. Come on up. One of the nice things about staying in campgrounds is they have, often anyway, showers. And this one does. And I have taken a shower after hiking all through those sand dunes. Shadow got to rest in the air-conditioned camper. We're feeling a lot better. Still hoping on the clouds. Still a little bit cloudier than I'd like. So fingers crossed. But we have about 3 hours before imaging time. And I'm going to take advantage of that time and launch the drone. See if I can get a little footage of the sand dunes. So I'm going to launch it right now, and if it turns out, I'll share it with you. Well, Shadow and I are on our first object, the Dumbell Nebula, an object that many beginners go after, and in fact, it was the very first image I ever captured. And when I show you the first image, you are going to laugh. Here's the first image. Yes, I know it's laughable, but it's what got me hooked on deep space astrophotography. After that, I couldn't get enough of it. Now, tonight I'm redoing the Dumbell Nebula many years later, and I hope So I hope I'm substantially better than back then. I am, and I'm very excited about how it's coming along. We have about an hour on it. Let me just tell you a little bit about it briefly. It is approximately 1,400 light years from Earth. Shadow, stop trying to get up. Come on up. Come up for just a second. About 1,400 light years from Earth. It is a small object. It's about 3 light years in diameter. That's big, but very small compared to many deep space objects. And it's the creation of a star that is called a white dwarf. It's come to the end of its life stages, and it's thrown off its outer layers in a brilliant display of color. And that is what has created this beautiful Dumbell Nebula. It also has little knots of dense space dust and gases that make it kind of cool. And some of them have little tails where the stellar winds coming from the white dwarf have hit the clumps of matter. They're not powerful enough to blow it all away, but they blow off some of it to create a tail. It's extremely interesting. Let's go out, take a look. I think we have about an hour, as I mentioned. I'm taking 30-second sub-exposures, and it's crystal clear out there. The Milky Way is brilliant and beautiful. Let's go see how it's coming along. The telescope is pointing almost straight up. And here you have the Dumbell Nebula. Is that not just incredible? And this will look a lot better when I've processed it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time showing you what's called electronically assisted astrophotography, where the image is being stacked and built right before our very eyes, but it's still not the same as running it through proper post-processing and fully developing the image. But look at that. That is just incredible. Absolutely incredible. There's hydrogens, oxygen, sulfur, all throwing off different colors, and helium. Spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. All right, I am planning on getting, maybe about 2 hours is all on this image. We've got 61 minutes, so if I get another hour or so, then that'll be sufficient. And then I'm going to be a deep space object hog and go after others. All right, it's 2:30 in the morning, and I finished imaging the Dumbell Nebula. I got close to 3 hours of time on it. I won't use all of those sub-exposures. I'll pick the best ones, but it's going to be fantastic, I can tell. And I've decided for the second target tonight, I'm going to image yet again another object that was one of my first, and that is the Bubble Nebula in the constellation Cassiopeia. It is a really unique deep space object, a perfect bubble, the creation of a hot, very hot, massive star that is emitting stellar winds, and that is pushing it's in a giant cloud of hydrogen, and it's pushing the hydrogen away from it, and it's created a perfect bubble. It's just so weird to look at. It is so cool. So I'm on it, and in the same frame I have what's called the salt and pepper star cluster, and also another really cool tight little nebula that I can't remember the name of, and I don't have cell coverage. I have no Wi-Fi here, so I can't look it up, and I can't remember, but it's in it too, and I'll put it in the titles below when I finally have a chance to research it and remind myself what it is that I'm now imaging. But the Bubble Nebula is what I'm mainly going after. Really excited about it. I'm not going to take you out All right, I'm exhausted. I'm going to bed, and we'll show you the image once it's processed. I'll show you what we were imaging with. We were imaging with the Maxitoff Newtonian telescope with the Orion G24. It's the exact same camera as the ASI ZWO 2400 MC Pro, full color camera, and guiding with PhD2, sharp cap to capture the images with. Well, it's night 2, and we are on our target, which is the Pelican Nebula and the part of the North American Nebula. And I kind of framed the picture. I couldn't fit both the entirety of the North American Nebula and the Pelican Nebula in the frame, in the field of view. So I was trying to be a little artistic. We'll see how it turns out. It's got the Pelican Nebula, part of the North American Nebula, and a big star cluster that's embedded within the North American Nebula. Now, I'm battling clouds, and I'm taking 1-minute exposures, and I'm only able to keep about half of the 1-minute exposures. The brightness filter automatically kicks out those that there wasn't enough light to capture a good image. And of the images that I am capturing, there's the cloud, there's a little bit of a haze sometimes, so processing is going to be a challenge. But hey, that's astrophotography. We got to kind of learn to go with the flow. We'll do the best we can with it in post-processing. I'm not going to bother taking you out and showing you everything. I'll just show you the final image. And whether But last night was not great. I only got about 35 minutes on the Pelican Nebula. And the images that I did get, I still think there was a little bit of upper atmosphere clouds kind of fogging up things. So, hey, that's the way it goes. With astrophotography, you got to just sort of learn to go with the flow. But even though it was kind of cloudy, look at what we're waking up to. Look at this beautiful stuff. It's just gorgeous. I'll show you some drone footage. That'll make up for the lack of a stellar picture from the second night.